like, we need you to flip over so that we can check you. I'm like, no, not going to happen. I do not want to move. And they actually moved me. They picked me up and rotated me on my back to check my cervix.
I'm Petra. I had a vaginal birth after 3 cesareans. I'm a VBAC doula and birth educator, and I feel called to tell you that you deserve the birth experience that you want. I want you to join me every week to hear empowering birth stories, heart-led conversations, practical tips, evidence-based information, and yes, we definitely dive into the woo side of things too. My hope is for you to leave each episode feeling inspired and informed. Thank you so much for including me on your journey to VBAC. Now let's get into this episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Journey to VBAC. Today I am joined by Christina Baltazar, and she has 5 VBAC stories. Oh my gosh, so incredible. So she is a maternity and newborn portrait photographer in Lemoore, California. She is founder and co-partner of the Central Valley Belly to Baby Expo, whose mission is to provide a comprehensive and supportive environment for expecting parents and families with young children. She's offering access to local resources, education, and products that enhance their journey from pregnancy through early childhood. Christina has been married to her high school sweetheart for 17 years and has 6 children from 14 to under 1 years old. And oh my gosh, that is just so sweet. I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming on here and being willing to be vulnerable and share your stories, because I feel like we need more stories in the world to make VBAC more normalized, because, it is possible, obviously. I mean, look at you. You had 5 so far.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Petra. It's so exciting to be here, and I'm glad we finally get to connect after some reschedules. My kid's actually now 15, is the oldest, and almost 18 years now. So it's been a few months, but
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. That is incredible. So, what brought you to wanting a VBAC? So, obviously, you had a cesarean first. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was, let's see, about 25 years old when I was expecting my first baby. And I kind of, I'm from a larger family, so I've seen a little bit of birth and stuff when I was, and I knew that television birth was dramatized and like not what real birth was like. And so I just thought, women have been doing this for millennial.
Yeah.
And I think it was just, I took that and I was like, I don't need any birth education classes. I got this. Women have been doing this forever, right?
Yep.
And so I didn't take any birth courses, didn't even do a tour of the hospital that we were going to be birthing in, because I just trusted my provider, who was actually a midwife, a hospital midwife. And I actually signed up at the last minute for a quote unquote doula, one of the hospital doulas, to come and assist during the birth. And so I ended up in labor probably about a week early. So it's about 39 weeks with him. We went to the hospital, everything was going fine. I was only 3 centimeters dilated when we get there. You'll find out later that that's kind of typical for me. And things just kind of were going. And then I don't really remember a whole lot from this because it was so long ago, but I remember at one point they were having trouble finding the baby's heart rate on the monitors, because of course you're in the hospital, they want you all hooked up. And so we had all the contraction and the heart rate monitors on, and they couldn't find his heartbeat, or when I would have a contraction, the heartbeat would decelerate. And so we were trying all these different things, moving and that sort of thing, to find it. And at one point they had me in the shower in the hospital, and it went from hot to cold to hot to cold.
Oh
It
my
was just
gosh.
no control over the water temperature, very uncomfortable. And there were people in the room that I didn't want in the room for my birth as well. Like, I thought, oh, I'm probably going to want my mom there. She was there. Turns out I didn't want my mom there.
Yeah.
um, and I wanted more of my husband there as the support system for that. And he had no idea what to do. He was at that point kind of one of the men, was just like, can I just stay in the hallway until baby's born and I'll come in after baby's here?
Right.
But for me, I needed his support. And not my mom's as much.
Mhm.
So she was there trying to help, doing her best. I remember at one point she was like rubbing my head, trying to comfort me and made me feel better. And I hated that. And then out of nowhere, my little sister was in the room too. And she wasn't even 18. She was like 16 years old at the time. And I'm like, what is she doing in my room?
Yeah.
And, you know, first birth, you're birthing, you're practically naked in front of everybody. So it was very uncomfortable for a very conservative bee at the time.
Yeah.
And so all those factors, I think, kind of played into what was happening in my head and therefore what was happening with my body during this birth. And so things just kind of got a little out of control. And then they were having a transition of, they were doing a shift change of the nurses. And so after the shift change, the nurses came in and they're like, what are you doing? We can't find baby's heart rate. And then they just rushed me off to a C-section. There was like no talking about it whatsoever. It was just like, we got to have a C-section now. We can't find baby's heart rate, or his heart rate is decelerating during every contraction. And it just went so quick. My husband didn't even get into the operating room in time to see the baby born.
Oh, wow.
So he was really disappointed about that.
Mhm.
Because I remember after he was like, yeah, they asked me to cut the umbilical cord, but the baby was already out and the umbilical cord wasn't even attached. So what's the point?
Right.
So that was kind of the first birth experience, very traumatizing.
Yeah.
But all in all, the baby ended up here healthy, well, and he's 15 years old now. So
Wow.
he's standing just over here, he's walking it through.
I love it.
So that was kind of where it began. And then we were expecting our second child about 2 years later. And I knew I didn't want that experience again. And so when I had met with my midwife again, she was like, well, if you want a C-section or you want a VBAC, you need to go to Clovis Community Hospital. Because at that time, Clovis was well known for being supportive of VBACs.
Okay.
And they had a pretty good rate. I think that's kind of changed since then. But Visalia had a very poor rating, was not supportive of VBACs, and Clovis was very supportive. And so I changed providers and went to Clovis Community for my next pregnancy. And that was like the dream hospital birth. So in preparation for it, I ended up taking a course from somebody out of Fresno. I can't remember who it was, but it was called Birthing from Within. I read the book and I did like a course. My husband jokes that it was like therapy for pregnant women. And it kind of was. I won't object to that, but it really helped me prepare. I did hypno babies, meditations and stuff leading up to it as well. I made sure to have like snacks on hand for the birth experience. I had my honey sticks and bone broth in a container so that I could have something to sustain myself during the birth if it was going to take a long time.
Mhm.
And so I was really prepared for the second one. And we ended up in the hospital pretty late in the evening. It was probably like 10 o'clock in the evening when we got there. I had hired a doula for this one as well, not a hospital one, just she's now retired from being a doula, but she was there to help me if I needed it. And she actually didn't show up until the very end because of how quick it went. So we get to the hospital and we're just walking around in the birthing ward for a couple of hours. And then the doctor comes in and checks me. And she's like looking at me kind of strange because I was in the bathroom and I was making a lot of noises. And she's like, that's weird. But last time we checked her, she was really not very far along. So I expect to see you in the morning. The doctor had to come back an hour later because with this one, I went from 6 to delivered in 23 minutes.
Wow.
So it was really quick.
That is really quick.
And the doula had been there for the last like half an hour of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Wow,
was
for the last half hour. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, because
Yeah.
so fast. So that was my second birth. The third birth and my second VBAC, he decided to come a little bit early. So we were planning for his baby shower that following Saturday. And the weeks leading up to it, I had been admitted, I had to go to the hospital to do this non-stress test with him because he was having some heart rate issues during the stress test because I had gestational diabetes.
Mhm.
So for a couple of weeks in a row, they sent me to the hospital to be monitored for a couple hours, and then they sent me home. So it was kind of the same thing this time, as they sent me to the hospital, monitored me, and they're like, oh, you go home. That same evening, I ended up back at the hospital because the contractions didn't stop. And I was only
Mhm.
36 weeks. And let's see if I can even remember his. It was so fast again with him. Oh, he was the one where I was in triage for a very long time. So still same hospital, Clovis Community. They must have been very full because we were in triage for a very long time. So the doula couldn't get in to support us because only my
Mhm.
husband was allowed in the triage unit. And again, we were hooked up to monitors, and I'm doing like hands and knees across the back of the bed, listening to my hypno babies, trying to like get through all the contractions. And then things started getting stronger, and I was like, I think I need some pain medication. And they're like, well, he hasn't been on the monitor for 10 minutes straight, so we need you to wait. So they were trying to get him for 10 minutes straight, and it just wasn't happening.
Mhm.
uh, and I was like, no, I need pain medication now, I need a room now. um, and then all of a sudden I felt like I needed to push, because they checked me and I was like 6 centimeters, I think. And they're like, and then suddenly I felt the pushy sensation. And so they're rushing me, throwing the blankets over me, rushing me to a birth room. And they're like, okay, can you move from the triage bed to the birthing bed? And I was like, nope, not going to happen. Mid contractions were just back to back to back.
Yeah.
And so they ended up picking me up with the sheets and transitioning me to the other bed. And as soon as they sat me down, his head came out. And I
Wow.
caught his head. So another really quick birth. So I'm very lucky as far as fast birthing goes. It's very
Uh-huh.
intense. Um,
Right.
so he was number 3. He was perfect, and was at his own baby shower.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
uh, and then let's see, baby number 4 um, was our second little girl, and so Cecilia. So she was, which one was she?
I know you got to remember all of
I
them.
gotta remember all of these. At this point, I was like, oh, I kind of want a home birth, and so I was kind of researching that. But my husband wasn't comfortable with it, so again, we went back to Clovis Community. I had the same doula try to come to the birth again. Had tried to hire a birth photographer again, or for the first time actually, and so with her, it was middle of summer, so it was June. My husband, if you know my husband, you'll laugh at this, but he was like, I was having contractions during the day, and I was like, yeah, I think we're gonna have a baby tonight. But I was like, there's no point in going to the hospital yet because they're just gonna send me home. I was having them, but they weren't strong and they were pretty far apart.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, let's go to the hospital. We'll get free air conditioning for a couple of hours.
That sounds like my husband too. He's like all about that kind of stuff. I love it.
So again, we went to the hospital. They checked me. They're like, "Oh, you're only 3 centimeters." So they're like, "Why don't you go walk around for a couple hours?" And so we left the hospital and we're walking around like Best Buy and TJ Maxx and all those stores that there. And I'm having contractions in the middle of Best Buy, which is hilarious. People are looking at me really funny.
I bet.
And then we go back to the hospital a couple hours later. And I'm still 3 centimeters. And so they're like, you're not progressing. You can go home. You'll probably have this baby tomorrow. And I'm like, I doubt that. But they send me home anyway. And it's 45 minutes from the hospital home.
Oh my
And so,
gosh.
so I text my doula. I was like, I'm having contractions. They're pretty consistent. I feel like they're getting stronger, even though I'm not progressing. And she's like, well, maybe baby's sitting on your cervix the wrong way. So I get out to the car. She's all, do hands and knees in the car. So I do hands and knees in the car. My husband runs in and goes to the bathroom. He comes back out, and then we walk around because it's almost time that the regular entrance is closed. So we walk around to the emergency room, and that takes probably a half an hour to finally get, because I was having them so consistently.
Yeah.
So we walk around to the other side, get into the ER. I go in the restroom. I'm having contractions on the toilet, and lady's like, "Are you okay?" "Fine, I'm just having a baby."
Wow.
But they put me back, and they get me into a bed in the ER area. And I was like, "Look, if I am 5 centimeters, you better get me into a room because this baby will come quick." And at this time, the lady's looking at me. She's like, "Okay, I believe you. This is baby number 4. I believe you. Check me. I'm 5 centimeters." So they get me up to the room. And I don't know how long it is between the time, because it's all just kind of a blur, but I don't know how long it is from ER to the birthing room, but it wasn't very long at all, because by the time they get me up there, and maybe 10-15 minutes later, the doctor comes in. I'm having intense contractions, feel pushy. The doctor comes in, barely gets one glove on, and has to catch the baby with one glove.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So that was VBAC number 3, baby number 4.
Uh-huh.
And we decided we were done. And then God surprised us and laughs. And
Yep.
we make plans, and God laughs at our plans because he has better plans, right?
Absolutely.
So 5 years later, we're expecting our 5th baby. And this time I'm like, we're having this baby at home. There's no question about it. We've experienced quick births, had no issues, no medication for any of them. And so my husband's on board. So we hire a midwife this time to come and assist. And so Rebecca Hammer was my midwife. Shout out to her. And Lacey Chastain was assisting at that time. And so with this one, it was just an amazing at-home birth. It was just beautiful and fantastic. I think it was like a Monday evening where I finally went into labor, or maybe it was like a Sunday. But of course, it waited until I was done with whatever I needed to accomplish, and then my body just relaxed. And
right.
So we had a beautiful at-home birth experience in the early morning hours. Twinkly lights up in the room, the birthing pool all set up. I think I text Rebecca at about midnight, and I was like, "Hey, we're definitely having a baby, and it takes her about an hour and a half to get down here."
Okay.
I was like, "I think you need to leave and come and to be here with us and stuff." And my husband sets up the pool, and I'm just doing my thing, birthing, and then they show up. My husband makes them a pot of coffee. I'm birthing back in the bedroom. And then they check me when they arrive, of course. And again, I'm only 3 centimeters dilated when they check me. But they're like, "Just do your thing. And then we'll come in and check on you when, we know that you need it." And I think it was maybe an hour after they got here. They come in, they could hear that I was in transition. We get in the pool, and yeah, we have the baby in the pool. It was just amazing. Just a couple pushes, and then we got to go to bed. So it was great. My kids laugh because that last push after the ring of fire, they could be like, they heard me like roar. And they're like, "Oh, we knew the baby was born when we heard you make that sound." So I did wake the kids up, but they went back to sleep. And then they got up in the morning to get ready for school. They saw that they met their new little sister, and then they went off to school for the day. So
I love that. And did you do anything different to prepare for your home birth than the hospital birth?
Not really. I still did the hypnobaby courses. Like I still had all that with me. So that was permanent. I didn't really do anything different. Like I made sure I was exercising throughout all of these pregnancies and eating well, eating lots of dates at the end, I think really.
Yeah.
But nothing specific that I did differently from the first VBAC to all the other ones. Maybe just exercising more and being more aware of how it was moving my body so that I wasn't in as much pain during pregnancy. I did see a chiropractor for this one because we weren't sure if she was head down at first. And so my chiropractor did a few adjustments and stuff to make sure that she was. But yeah, the preparation, lots of the inversions too, leading up to make sure she was in the right positioning. That was pretty much it.
And did you have a doula with this birth?
No, I figured I
Okay.
had the midwives. Doulas weren't making it on time. I was I had hired a birth photographer, but again, this one had gone so quickly. And like we had some timing issues. And so the birth photographer ended up not being able to be here. So I don't have any pictures from
Darn.
any of the births. But that's okay.
Yeah.
And then finally, baby number 6 is the most recent. So this was January 2024. So he was due in mid-February, actually. So we were planning for another home birth with Lacey Chastain again. And so the goal was to have the same type of birth as baby number 5, because that was fantastic. But this little guy had other plans and decided that he wanted to show up really early. So we weren't quite sure because the ultrasound and the LMP were a little bit off. And so we weren't sure if I was 35 or 36 weeks when I was actually in labor. And I had lost my mucus plug at like 34 weeks.
Okay.
And so I text Lacey, I was like, these contractions aren't stopping. I'm pretty sure we're gonna have a baby. And she's like, well, you're borderline home birth safe or not. So she's like, I suggest you go to the hospital. So instead of going to community this time to make sure that we had a good preemie team on call, we went to Fresno community this time. And it wasn't very exciting at first. It was made myself a shake before so that I could have something in my system because I was really hungry at that point. And we drove up to the hospital, and then I ended up forgetting to even finish it. But we get to the hospital and I'm in triage, and they're doing the ultrasound to see how big baby is. And they're like, well, we think he's 36 weeks. We think he should be okay. But they gave me a steroid shot for him just in case. And then I have, call it, I'm blanking, not group B strep. What's the other one where you need the shots if you're negative?
Oh, yes, RH negative. Yes, yes.
So I had to get the RH negative, the RhoGAM shot again then too. So they gave that to me. And so they're just kind of monitoring me and kind of letting me do my thing and doing testing. And then I went to the restroom, came back, and I laid down, and then my water broke. And I was just like, oh, this never happened in any of my other births. My water doesn't break until baby's on their way out.
Wow.
I was like, so they're checking, testing, making sure it's amniotic fluid and all that sort of stuff, and nothing crazy in it. And then I'm like, I need a room because these are getting intense. Like I could barely, don't talk to me. I need to really focus and concentrate to get through these contractions. But they're again worried, hospital setting. They're very worried about the monitors and how baby's doing, especially since he was a preemie. And so I totally understand, but it was very distracting and frustrating at the same time.
Right.
So they get me into a room, and I'm doing hands and knees over the back of the bed again because it's most comfortable, and I feel like that's going to make him come down faster and get out. And they're like, we need you to flip over so that we can check you. I'm like, no, not going to happen. I do not want to move. And they actually moved me. They picked me up and rotated me on my back to check my cervix.
Wow.
So I was very angry that happened.
Oh, I bet.
And because they could have checked me how I was if they were being supportive at all.
Yeah.
But they refused to check me in that position. And they're like, well, baby is too high up. We can't, like, because we can't get him on the monitor. He's too high up too. And they wanted to put the scalp monitor on him, but they couldn't reach because he was so far up. And they're like, we're going to prepare for a C-section for you.
Oh my gosh.
And so talk about scaring you.
Yeah.
So I don't remember exactly what happened because it was all just so fast, like very intense contractions. Again, we're back to back. And then I'm like panicking because we're going to go into a C-section. I don't want a C-section, but I want baby out because the contractions are so strong.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm sitting there and I feel like I need to push again.
Mhm.
And they wheel me out into the hallway. And I'm like, nope, something just popped. My water burst, my bag burst again completely this time. And so
Yeah.
baby was definitely on his way out.
Yeah.
Um, and then suddenly I felt like I needed to push. And they're like, don't push, don't push.
Oh my
Don't push.
gosh.
But they get me into the OR and I'm under all these bright lights.
Mhm.
And they put me onto the bed and they're like, don't push, don't push. And I'm like, I can't help it. Baby's coming. And baby was actually born naturally on his own without any medication um,
Mm.
in the OR. And,
Wow.
and I think my husband missed it again.
Oh my gosh.
Because I remember kissing him goodbye to get all the gown on and then and as soon as baby was born, of course they took him from me to make sure that he was healthy and all that. So because at first he didn't cry right away, but as soon as they got him to the warmer, he was fine and
Yeah.
started crying. And then they handed him to me like 2 minutes later. So all in
Wow.
all, it ended up well and was a fine birthday experience, but I definitely missed the home birth experience for the last one.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a different vibe, like in every sense of the word, just like from home birth, and then you actually gave birth in the OR. So, how did you feel after that? Like, because that's a lot to happen in, I feel like, such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it was a lot, and the nurses were talking about it for a couple of days, apparently.
I,
Um, it it was intense and kind of disappointing for that last one, but he is such a joy, so it is what it is. And I
yeah,
did have my beautiful home birth and natural, and like we were still all natural. I just wouldn't recommend that setting.
right, absolutely. So, is there something that you focused on with every birth, or even just with like, I mean, I know you've had five of them, which gosh, still saying that, like that is just so incredible. You're amazing. But just like, is there anything you focused on to prepare either like mentally? I know you said physically you were more so focusing on like moving your body and all that kind of stuff, but like mentally, because I know you said you did the hypno babies, and the
Yeah.
meditation, right? So was
Mhm.
there something you focused on mostly to help you through those?
Um, Through the actual birthing process, I think the visual that came to mind mostly was like the opening of a flower and like just breathing into that, and that really helping to imagine that my cervix was doing that during the birth process. And that helped me to breathe in the right areas as well, instead of keeping it high up in the lungs, to breathe down into um, the canal to just let the baby do his thing, and then
Right.
talking to the babies during each of the birthing process and be like, hey, you're coming soon, and just remembering that each, just focusing on what was there now instead of worrying about what was to come, like how much longer do I have, because every time that you worry about what's coming, you get stressed, and then that makes your body contract even more and harder. And I think that's kind of why this last one I was just like so worried for the baby instead of focusing, because they were so like on me and intense and there were wires everywhere and I was getting frustrated with that. But when I closed my eyes and just breathed into um, what's here now, what can I do in this moment to just kind of relax and help the baby, that really brought the focus back and like calmed everything down and made it a little bit easier to get through those waves and the pain that was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a great thing to do during, I mean, even pregnancy, that can be super helpful is
Mhm.
focusing on like the controllables that you can control or just like the here and now and not so much worrying about like, oh my gosh, this could happen. Oh my gosh, this could happen,
Right.
especially in the setting of like the hospital, staying in tune with yourself, going into yourself. That's why, like, a lot of times I tell people, like, just go completely inward.
Yeah.
Because if you're focusing on these monitors, you're focusing on what this little group of doctors or nurses are talking about in the corner of the room, then you're not going to be focusing on how to handle one contraction at a time. You're going to be focusing on like how much longer am I going to be in this room? How much longer am I going to be in labor? What's going to happen next? And then your mind just starts spiraling. So, yeah, I think that is
Yeah.
such a great tip for people is to just like focus on yourself and don't worry so much about what everybody else is doing around you.
Yeah, because all in the end, your body knows exactly what it needs to do to get through it. And you just need to help it along a little bit by staying focused. And so I was probably closed eyes for like 90% of my births because it just helps me to focus internally by closing my eyes and centering that way.
Exactly. And I feel like now that you say that, like when I was in my labor for my fourth baby, that's all I was I kept closing my eyes and staying internal because once I opened my eyes, then I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm in the hospital. Oh my gosh, there's six people in here, like,
Right.
and you just start thinking about all the other things. So then you just close your eyes, stay internal, and just focus on what you're doing and your baby, like focusing on that, and that's it.
Yeah. 100%.
So what was your longest labor? Because you obviously had super fast labor. So what is the longest one that you had?
The longest labor, I don't even know. I don't even know which one was the longest. It was probably I couldn't tell you which one was the longest because they were all probably about the same amount of time. My guess would be the my fourth baby, uh, the one where I was walking around outside a
Mm,
lot. But
yeah,
they were all pretty quick. I'm very lucky, and I don't take that for granted. Like I understand not everybody gets that experience. Uh,
right.
there's pros and cons to both.
Exactly. Yeah, because I know some people are like, oh my gosh, I'm hoping for a very quick labor. But people don't realize, I mean, not everybody realizes that if you do have a very fast labor, those contractions are way more intense because your body is trying to do, what some people takes them 20 hours to do in like under 6 hours or whatever it was, that it
Yeah.
took you to go into, from that first contraction to giving birth to your baby. They're fast, they're intense, and some people can't handle it. And that's why some people are really like, oh my gosh, give me all the drugs, which is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that if that's, what you choose to do. But if you're not mentally prepared to just take one contraction at a time, it can be overwhelming.
Yes, definitely.
So is that what you did is like threw your hypnobirthing tracks in and just like honed into that throughout all of your labors?
100%. I had the headphones in my ears like probably 95% of the time, unless they were specifically talking to me. I was like, ask my husband, talk to him if you have questions. I'm listening to this and that only. Because in my experience, doctors and nurses should know just kind of by what you're doing and the sounds that you're making, kind of where you are in the birthing process if they've paid attention to a natural birth. And I think that was the issue with being in Fresno. I don't know if there were student nurses there or what exactly was happening. Um, I don't even know who was there. Just I remember them coming back in a few days later and be like, yeah, we were talking about that for a couple days, but um, they may have not experienced a natural birth before. And so if that's the case, then you just kind of need to rely on yourself and like focus on what's happening and be prepared for that.
Exactly. And I think that's also a thing to keep into account is your birth team. Like a lot of times you've never met these people if you're giving birth in the hospital. It could be whatever nurse, whatever doctor's on call. And some of them have never seen a physiological birth where a mom is just able to labor unmedicated and just go through the labor process. So sometimes they don't know what the sounds are. They don't know what the things moms say when they're about to push their baby out. And, it's really sad that the doctors like a lot of times, I can't remember the percentage, but there's a high percentage of doctors, OBs, who have never seen like a vaginal birth unfold on its own because they're so conditioned to, and it's not a fault of their own. They're trained to be skilled surgeons because they have to perform cesareans, which are major abdominal surgery. So that is like one of the main focuses. But I feel like it should be mandatory that they have to see like a vaginal birth, like a physiological birth from start to finish, so they can
At least
understand the
one.
process. At least one, at least one.
Right?
Um,
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had, besides the home birth, none of the doctors that delivered my baby, quote unquote, were actually my doctors. Like, I never had my actual provider at the birth, except for the home birth. So
Yeah.
be prepared for a stranger.
Yeah. Definitely. And so how were your postpartum experiences after each of your births? Like, was it totally different from your cesarean to your vaginal births?
Yes. So the cesarean section, I felt like I was homebound for weeks because, you can't move, you can't drive yourself. Um, it's hard to cough or laugh or sneeze or anything like that when you have major abdominal surgery. And it was very uncomfortable. Thankfully, I had my mom and my mother-in-law that came and helped and assisted during that time. And my husband took a couple weeks off to help with baby and stuff. So definitely take your time if you have a C-section, and um, it's a healing process and it takes months to fully heal from that. So take your time to recover. As far as like the vaginal births, I had like a 3rd-degree tear with my first vaginal birth because I didn't want, well, there wasn't no time anyway, but I didn't want an episiotomy or anything like that. So I naturally tore if I tore at all with any of my births. um, and so that had a little bit of pain with it, of course, because I did have to do some stitches down there to fix things up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I remember with my 4th baby, 3 days later, we were in Walmart going grocery shopping because we needed food. So she was in my carrier, and we were like, didn't even feel like it felt like it'd been weeks, but it'd just been 3 days from the hospital.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but the best recovery is definitely at home if you can do that, because everything's there. You get your comfy bed. You have your other children right away that get to meet the baby. Um, the last one, we were in the hospital for almost a week because he was a preemie. Um, excuse me. And so they didn't get to meet him until he was a few days old. But it was overall a fairly easy recovery with all of them when it was a vaginal birth versus a cesarean.
That is so great. Oh my gosh. So, if there was any kind of tips that you would want to give somebody that is planning their VBAC and maybe they're unsure on how to decide whether they want like a hospital birth or a home birth, is there any tips or suggestions that you could give them to help them?
Well, definitely if you haven't taken one, definitely take a birthing course. I suggest some books. Birthing from Within was one of my favorites after my cesarean. And then anything by Ina May Gaskin, of course, is amazing. Um, but do the birthing classes and like practice fake contractions and stuff to help you get through those. As far as choosing home birth versus hospital birth, it's really your comfort level and on safety and that sort of thing, and then how healthy you are throughout your pregnancy. A midwife could tell you better if you're a good candidate for a home birth or not. But I would say that most women actually are good candidates for a home birth. Just find a midwife early, because I know we're few and far between here in the Valley. So, and then if you cannot do a home birth, I definitely suggest having a doula if you can afford that. And I think now that insurance is starting to cover doulas too. So that's fantastic news that just came out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are great tips because the childbirth education, I mean, I feel like we should all have childbirth education, period, before we even ever have kids, just so we understand not just the birth, but like during pregnancy and postpartum, because, those, oh my gosh, like pregnancy, there can be so many questions that pop up that you're just like, I don't understand what's happening with my body right now. And just understand how your body is changing and, learning to kind of like accept that. And because sometimes that can be really hard, really hard to see your body change in a way you may not understand. And then your baby that's growing inside of you, and then the birth process, and then the postpartum lasts so much longer than the birth, which I think it's always gets skipped. And I know I personally had like really rough postpartum experiences because I'm like, I could do it by myself. Like, I got this. Like, I don't need to ask for help.
No,
Uh,
definitely everybody needs help postpartum. If you don't have like a good community around you, it's really hard. my mom wasn't around for this last one to really help out. So, but we prepared postpartum by making sure we had meals in the freezer ready to go. And then we did have a network of people that were around to like bring us food if we needed it, or you know things like that. So just reach out to people in your community. There's mom groups all over that would be willing to help you for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's like meal trains, and there's something called Be Her Village, which I don't know. I mean, I've talked about it multiple times on the podcast, but some people I'm sure still don't know. But Be Her Village, that can help you get the funds to support yourself, whether that's even through pregnancy, getting a doula, lactation, postpartum doula. So there's so many different things. We just unfortunately have to like dig for some of them. But I'm looking to make this stuff mainstream because gosh, we need the support for sure.
Yes,
Support and
definitely.
community.
That is one of the reasons that I started the Belly to Baby Expo too, because after being pregnant 5 times and not having anything that was just like one-stop shop, um, I felt we needed like one local resource that you can find local businesses that were willing to help you through birth and postpartum and raising kids and at those young stages, because we need it. And so myself and the owners of Secret Stork Ultrasound, we partnered to create that expo, and it's been such a service to the community, and we're looking forward to it getting even bigger in the
I
coming
love
years
that.
too.
Yeah. So can you give us a little insight into what exactly that looks like? And then also like when it happens so that people who are in the area can also attend?
Yes, definitely. So the Central Valley Belly to Baby Expo is designed to be a, if you've ever been to a wedding exhibition, it's kind of the same thing, but this is all about birth and babies and pregnancy. Um, and so that's kind of how it was designed. It's lots of vendors or businesses that are set up to be a community resource for everyone. Um, so we have everything from doulas and lactation consultants, chiropractors, midwives, um, maternity gown designers now, and like a bunch, and just anything that provides resources for moms and families that have or are expecting children. And so it's been a lot of fun and a good resource for the local community. And we're always looking to add more resources that may have been missed. But in the coming months, the one coming up should be around Mother's Day is what we're planning for. So probably in early May, we'll be doing the next expo. And it's a ton of fun. So last time we had about 20. So usually we're having like 20 to 30 vendors that will be there to support you. They have a little massage station for the VIP members, and it's a lot of fun.
Love that. That is incredible. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait for the next one. I need to go over there because I know we're like
Yeah.
about, I want to say it's like 2 hours from me. So I'm definitely going to have to make that trek and go check it out. Or even who knows, maybe I'll be a vendor. We'll see.
Yes, we would love to have you. So usually we've been going kind of back and forth between Fresno and the South Valley, and we're still debating on where we're going to be this coming May, just because we just wrapped up the one in October and then the holidays got upon us.
Yeah.
uh, but it'll probably either be in Visalia or Fresno. But it had been twice a year. I think we're going to be now sticking around to just one time a year. ABC 30 has been a great kind of support for us as well, because Vanessa Vasconcelos comes and does the hosting for us.
Oh,
And
fun.
yeah, so she's great.
That is so awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you created this resource and are giving us more resources. Gosh, we need more of those all around the country because that is just so important. Because, like I said, it's like we have to go digging to go find resources. And why not have these places like the wedding expos where we can just have like these one-stop shops and then we have this like resource list that we can refer to. I love that.
Yeah, and I wanted it to be more than just like all the baby things that a lot of the baby expos are about. Like they're all about like the car seats and the decorations, and that stuff's fun and important. Like you definitely need some of those things, but having support is where my heart is at, is getting that support to people. And then all the other stuff is a bonus.
I love that. That's incredible. So you're also a photographer.
Yes.
So I would love for you to let us know what exactly you do and where we can find you at if somebody wants to work with you.
Sure. So I am a full service portrait photographer and I do studio work and I focus primarily on motherhood. So I do maternity, newborns, babies, and lots of mommy and me stuff as well. Um, you can find me at my website, ChristinaBaltazar.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I do have a TikTok. I'm not very active on that, but definitely on Instagram is like the fastest way to find the newest stuff.
Yeah.
Or the website's just been updated as well. I have an email list. I try to send out regular emails that provide resources and information for you to throughout your pregnancy. But I love creating beautiful artwork for my clients. So all of my clients get either something for the wall that they can display in their home or a beautiful album that they can sit and enjoy every day as their children grows. And so it's ending up to be their future heirlooms is what they will be.
Oh, I love that so much. Something they can pass down for generations. That is
Yes.
incredible. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your stories. Oh my gosh, you are just incredible and you are an incredible resource to our community. So thank you for everything you do.
Oh, thank you, Petra.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we will wrap this up. But before we wrap it up, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
The biggest thing is just come and find me and I would love to chat. I am actually working on becoming a birth educator as well because we need more in this area of the valley. So in 2025, I'm becoming a birth educator too. So that should be fun.
Yay. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. See, you're going to be an incredible resource. Oh my gosh, I'm going to send
Yeah.
everybody over there to you. That is awesome. Well,
Thanks.
thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Petra.
I hope you loved that episode as much as I loved creating it. And if you want to learn more, be sure to download your free VBAC resource guide for even more tips and advice at birthingcometrue.com/VBAC guide. And don't forget to subscribe to the Journey to VBAC so you never miss an episode. Until next time, trust in yourself and remember, you are amazing no matter how your birth unfolds. Bye for now.